Hey everyone, so we've all been there, right? You start a new Laravel project, it's clean, it's simple, and then a few months later, it's this tangled mess. Well, today we're going to move beyond the basic MVC pattern. We're going to architect applications that are actually scalable, maintainable, and yeah, truly professional. The road to messy code almost always starts in the exact same place, what we call the fat controller. It's a classic growing pain for pretty much every developer who's trying to level up their skills. So you start with a simple store method. You know the drill. It's got to handle validation, run some business logic, save something to the database, maybe fire off an email. At first, it feels super efficient. But trust me, it's a trap. I mean, does this look familiar? Of course it does. This pattern is incredibly common. And look, it's totally fine for a quick prototype. But in a real project, one that's going to grow, this single method becomes a huge bottleneck. It's just a nightmare for complexity and maintenance down the line. And this really gets to the heart of it. What's the real cost? Well, how do you test just the email logic without faking an entire HTTP request? How do you reuse that database logic somewhere else, like in an artisan command? You can't really. Not easily. Because this one method is trying to be a hero and do 4 or 5 different jobs at once. And that, my friends, is a classic violation of the single responsibility principle. So, the fix, the whole point of this, is that we need to break things apart. Every single solution we're about to look at is built on this one simple but powerful idea. Give each piece of your application one single clear job to do. That's it. So, how do we actually start separating these responsibilities? Well, we build a toolkit. I want you to think of these next patterns not as some rigid set of rules, but as specialized tools you can pull out to solve very specific problems. And most importantly, keep your controllers nice and lean. First up, form requests. This is probably the easiest and most immediate win you can get. Instead of jamming validation rules inside your controller, you create a dedicated class. Its only job in life is to authorize the request and validate the data coming in. Simple. And just look at the difference here. It's night and day, right? The before is all cluttered up with validation arrays. The after is, well, it's beautifully simple. Laravel's smart enough to automatically resolve and run that store user request for us. If the validation fails, our code in the store method never even gets touched. It's clean, it's reusable, and it basically documents itself. Okay, next up, data transfer objects, or DTOs. We've all passed around those messy, untyped arrays where a simple typo in a key can cause a bug that takes an hour to find. A DTO solves that. It's just a simple, predictable class for your data. This gives you type hinting, awesome auto-completion in your IDE, and a really clear contract for the data that's moving through your system. Now, this is a big one, the whole debate between services and actions. This is where a lot of people get confused, so let's clear it up. Think of a service class as a hub for related logic. A user service might have methods for creating, updating, and deleting users. An action class, on the other hand, does one single thing. It has one public method, and we usually just call it execute. So here's the best way to think about it. An action is like a scalpel. It's a precise tool for one single job, like a create user action. A service is the entire surgeon's kit. It holds all the related tools for a specific domain, like a user service that handles the whole shebang. But what about logic that has to run every single time a model changes? Like clearing a cache whenever a user's profile is updated. Observers are absolutely perfect for this. They just sit there and listen for Eloquent's lifecycle events, and then they run your code automatically. It keeps all that side effect logic out of your controllers and even out of your models. Okay, let's shift gears and talk about speed, because not every task needs to happen while your user is staring at a loading spinner. And this is where learning to work asynchronously becomes a total superpower for the user experience. Events and listeners are really the foundation of a flexible, decoupled system. Instead of your controller directly calling an email service, it just shouts out into the void, "Hey, a user just registered." That's the event. Then any number of listeners can hear that and react to it. This is so powerful because you can add new features, like, say, give the user some bonus points just by adding a new listener, without ever touching the original registration code. So if the event is the announcement, what does the actual work, especially the slow work? Well, that's where jobs and queues come in. A job is basically a class that represents a task you want to run later, in the background. It's a to-do item for your server, like sending that welcome email. So your goal here is to think of your application having a fast lane and a slow lane. The fast lane is for everything the user absolutely needs for an immediate response. The slow lane is for everything else. Sending emails, crunching images, calling some slow external API. We push all of that stuff into a job so it can be handled in the background, which keeps the user experience incredibly snappy. Okay, so we've looked at all the individual tools in our toolkit. Now, let's put it all together. Let's assemble them into a complete, scalable blueprint using a classic example, a user registration flow. Just look at this beautiful, clean flow. Every single component has one job. The controller, it's just the doorman. It lets the request in. The form request is the security guard, handling validation. The create user action is the project manager, orchestrating the task by calling a service user to do the real thinking. The service uses the model to save the data, and then, at the very end, it fires off an event. See how clean and testable each individual step is? And that user-registered event we fired, that's what completes the picture. It triggers a listener, and that listener's only job is to dispatch a send welcome email job to the queue. The user gets an immediate success response, and the actual email gets sent a few seconds later in the background. It's perfect. Now, before we wrap up, I have to give you a crucial piece of senior-level advice. Having all these shiny new tools is great, but using all of them when you absolutely don't need to, that has a name. It's called over-engineering. So let's talk about how to be smart about this. Now, for truly massive applications, you might even start thinking about modules or packages. A module is basically a mini app inside your main project, like a billing module. A package is for code you want to reuse across completely different projects. But listen, this is an advanced step. You only go here when your application is getting so big that it truly needs this level of separation. Okay, listen closely, because if you remember one thing from this entire explainer, make it this. Resist the temptation to create actions and services for absolutely everything right from the start. Begin simply. Let your code tell you when it's time to refactor, when you start seeing duplication, or when a controller method gets so long it's hard to read. That is your signal to pull out one of these tools and start extracting. So let's just summarize everything with a simple mental model you can take with you. The controller is just the entry point. An action is a single task. A service is the business brain where the core logic lives. An event is a system-wide notification that something important happened. And a job is a background worker doing all the heavy lifting. So now you have the toolkit, you have the mental model. Go take a fresh look at your own code base. Think about that one fat controller you've been avoiding, or that one process that makes users wait. The only question left is, which part of your project are you going to make better first?